Do you find yourself every single week trying to find a tight end like this? A lot of us do. Let's talk about the top 12 tight ends here for week 13. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well. Let's talk some tight ends, the football kind, here for week 13. I got my top 12 rankings scrolling along the bottom. We're going to go through them one by one here real quick. And there are a few sleeper names out there, and I'll add them in there at the end. Not a whole lot of great options, right? Tight end has been one of the weakest we've seen all year long. Really a crapshoot from week to week. But we are now without Jack motherfucking Doyle, and I'm a little disappointed about it. But all the Eric Ebron owners are happy, so that's a good thing. But for now, let's get in the top 12 tight ends here for week 13. All right, number one is no surprise, really, right? Travis Kelce. He is the number 2 currently ranked fantasy tight end as far as points scored on the year coming off his bye week. Had double-digit points every single game this year with the exception of week 1. He's been one of the top tight ends by far. Really only, 3 tight ends that we can really say that about. He's got a great matchup. Going up against the 19th ranked defense of the Oakland Raiders, giving up on average 13 points a game to opposing tight ends. Haven't given up a touchdown to an opposing tight end in the last 3 games, though. That's something to pay attention to, but this is the Chiefs' offense. Travis Kelce is one of their featured stars. He's going to have a great game. He's my number 1 tight end for week 13. Number 2 this week is actually going to be the number 1 top scoring tight end in fantasy football. It's Zach Ertz of the Philadelphia Eagles. Had a great week last week, 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown against the New York Giants. And he's going to continue to be the number 1 option in that offense in Philadelphia. A little bit more difficult of a matchup this week, going up against the Washington Redskins, who are the 10th ranked team against opposing tight ends, allowing only about 9 points per game. Haven't allowed a touchdown to a tight end since week 8 and only 1 since week 5. Definitely a decent defense against tight ends, but Zach Ertz is so heavily involved, so heavily targeted. If you have him, he's one of the top, tight ends in all of football. You're going to start him. Number 3 is the feel-good story of George Kittle, still going strong. Had 6 catches for 48 yards last week. Not a great game, but it's still one of the most consistent producers from the tight end position all season long. Has had double-digit fantasy points every week since week 3, with the exception of week 6 against Green Bay. Someone who's definitely got high upside, high involvement in the offense. Going to see the volume, has 15 receptions over his last 2 games. A little bit more of a difficult matchup this week. The 9th ranked defense against opposing tight ends in the Seattle Seahawks, giving up on average only 8.5 points per game to opposing tight ends. However, they have allowed 3 receiving touchdowns by tight ends over their last 2 games. It's George Kittle. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of solid options from the tight end position. He's one of them. He's my tight end 3 this week. Number 4 is going to be Eric Ebron, Mr. 11 touchdowns through 11 games, having a career year. And now he doesn't have to worry about our buddy Jack motherfucking Doyle anymore. It's all his. Mo Alley Cox may miss again. He's been battling injuries. Eric Ebron is going to catapult up the rankings. He is now basically a top 4 fantasy tight end rest of season. If you have him, congratulations. This past week against Miami, 5 receptions, 45 yards, and another 2 touchdowns. That gives him 4 touchdowns over his last 3 games. And now the inconsistencies may somewhat go away. I know he's had a lot of great games this year. Hasn't put up huge receiving numbers, but has had a lot of solid games based off of the touchdowns. He's not as much touchdown dependent going forward, though, because I do expect a slight uptick in volume now that there is no Jack Doyle. Love Eric Ebron going forward. He's my tight end 4 this week. Number 5 is going to be David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns, somebody who had a great game, actually a great drive. The majority of his points came off one drive, but we'll take it. It doesn't really matter how he got them as long as he gets them. 5 receptions, 63 yards, and a touchdown. And the touchdown was amazing. He jumped like 3 or 4 yards away from the goal line. He was basically caught by the defender, like the defender was going to old school power slam him. And then his offensive lineman just pushed the entire pile, threw him into the end zone, and it was great. The good thing to see, though, was his involvement in the offense. Baker Mayfield's playing great. That offense as a whole is playing great. And now they get a great matchup going up against the Houston Texans, which are the 27th ranked defense against opposing tight ends. You saw that long touchdown pass to Jonnu Smith on Monday Night Football. They've now allowed a touchdown to an opposing tight end 3 straight weeks. Love the upside of David Njoku. He's my tight end 5 this week. Number 6 is going to be Cameron Brate of the Tampa Bay Bucks, somebody who may not see a large amount of volume but has that touchdown upside every single week. Last week, only 3 catches for 26 yards, but did get that touchdown. And now they get to go up against the worst defense against opposing tight ends. The Carolina Panthers are giving up, on average, over 16 points a game to opposing tight ends. Now, if you look at the stats, it looks a little bit better here as of late. They've only allowed a total of 48 receiving yards over their past 2 games to their opposing tight ends. The problem with that is they played the Seahawks and the Lions, neither of who feature a tight end in their offense. If you take those games away, the games before that, the 5 games before that, they have allowed a total of 7 touchdowns in those 5 games to opposing tight ends. All teams in which feature their tight end in their offense. Love Cameron Brate this week. He has high touchdown upside in a game that we know Tampa is going to throw a lot. I have him as my tight end 6 for week 13. Number 7 is the disappointment that is Rob Gronkowski. I mean, it's kind of hard to even think that he's down at 7. He's so used to being up at number 1 his entire career. It's really been a down season, and a lot of people disappointed with Gronk. However, don't give up quite yet. If he can play, he still has that ridiculous high upside. They get the Minnesota Vikings this week, who haven't allowed a touchdown to an opposing tight end since week 7. It's a tough matchup, but it's Gronk and Brady. He's going to get looks this past week against the Jets. Only had 3 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. Really dependent on health. Sounds like he's going to be okay for this week. He's going to be my number 7 tight end. But now that there's more options in that offense, now that Josh Gordon has been added to the mix, Sony Michel is there now, it's really kind of limited the upside of what we used to see with Gronk. I think the old Gronk days may be over, but he's still a viable starter just because the tight end position is so thin and so weak. Number 7 is probably right around where Gronk will sit every week that he's healthy going forward, unless something drastically changes in New England. Number 8 is going to be Greg Olsen of the Carolina Panthers. He had a down week last week, also 2 catches for 11 yards, only 3 fantasy points in PPR leagues. But he'd been on somewhat of a touchdown stretch before that. He'd had 4 touchdowns in his last 6 games. Now he gets the 29th ranked defense against opposing tight ends and the Tampa Bay Bucks. They haven't allowed a touchdown to an opposing tight end in 3 weeks, though. But we know that they're going to attack them through the air. Christian McCaffrey will open up the running game. Cam Newton, it's one of his favorite targets inside the red zone. The problem is they don't get in the red zone very often, and if they do, Christian McCaffrey is just chewing up all the touchdowns. It's really limited to the upside of Greg Olsen, but being that the position is so thin, tight end 8 is kind of where he may sit here for a while. Just based off of his touchdown upside alone, he's still a key part of this offense and one of the captains of the team. At some point, he's going to have one of these bigger breakout games, especially since he looks a little bit healthier here the past few weeks. Number 9 is Jared Cook of the Oakland Raiders, who seems to have, I don't even want to say righted the ship, because he only has a total of 63 receiving yards over his past 2 games, combined on 5 catches. However, he does have 2 touchdowns in those games, 1 in each. He's somebody that's going to have to be relied upon. There's not a whole lot of offensive weapons in the passing game for Derek Carr. Jared Cook needs to be involved, and he gets a great matchup this week against the Kansas City Chiefs, a game in which Oakland will have to throw a lot to stay in it. Definitely like Jared Cook this week. The Chiefs are giving up on average 15 points per game to opposing tight ends, including what they did that game before the bye where Gerald Everett absolutely torched them for 2 touchdowns. They can be had through the air. Jared Cook needs to be used more. It's just a little bit iffy in Oakland. If that offense was a little bit more consistent, he may be higher up this list. But as of right now, number 9 is as high as he's going to get, being that Oakland offense is just too dang inconsistent. Number 10 is going to be Jordan Reed of the Washington Redskins, somebody who's had 2 really good games for tight ends this year over the past 2 weeks. Over these last 2 games, he's had 13 receptions, 146 yards, and a touchdown. By far his best back-to-back stretch of the season. Now they get the Philadelphia Eagles, whose secondary is just decimated. They still are the number 4 ranked team against opposing tight ends, but they haven't really faced a team lately that uses their tight ends. Their past 4 games, the Giants with no Evan Ingram. The Saints, they don't really feature Ben Watson. The Cowboys, who is that? Jeff Swaim maybe at the time? The Jaguar, now there hasn't been a tight end that they've really faced going forward. Jordan Reed has the potential for a very good game this week. He's still healthy, which is an absolute miracle because it's week 13. He's going to be my number 10 tight end here this week. Number 11 is going to be Trey Burton of the Chicago Bears, and this one kind of hinges on the availability of Mitch Trubisky. Sounds like he may play, but it's something we need to pay attention to and watch going forward. Trey Burton last week against the Lions, not a whole lot, 4 catches for 28 yards. gets a decent matchup this week against the Giants, who are giving up on average almost 13 points a game to opposing fantasy tight ends, including last week against the Eagles when Zach Ertz went all over them. It's definitely a good matchup for Trey Burton, but he's a lot better and a lot more valuable with Mitch Magic under center, so pay attention to it. If something comes out where Mitch doesn't play, he'll probably end up moving a little bit farther down the rankings. Number 12 is going to be Austin Hooper, and if I would have told you in the preseason that, hey, by week 13, Austin Hooper will be the number 6 tight end in all of fantasy football, you probably would have laughed. I probably would have laughed for saying it. But here we are, week 13. He's the number 6 fantasy tight end right now in a decent matchup against Baltimore. We talk about that Baltimore defense all the time, but actually tight ends have some success against Baltimore. They've given up a touchdown to an opposing tight end 2 straight weeks and give up on average right around 13 points a game. Austin Hooper is a part of the game plan. This past game against the Saints, 5 catches, which is great, only 31 yards. Hasn't really seen that big yardage game, but has that potential to go out there and get you 5 to 8, 5 to even 10 receptions any given week. Somebody who the opposing defense can't really account for at times. With Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, Julio Jones, Austin Hooper has a tendency to kind of find some open gaps at times. I really like him this week. He's going to be my tight end 12, but he's somebody who actually may move up the ranks here as the week goes on. All right, those are my top 12 fantasy tight ends here for week 13. Hopefully that was able to help out. Make sure you comment below with any questions you got. Either myself or the community will try to help you out as much as possible. Really appreciate the support. Make sure you're looking out for that live show Saturday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Had a lot of fun with that the past few weeks. Look forward to talking to you guys. Have a good rest of your week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.